When you step on the scale and feel absolutely crushed that you haven't lost a single pound despite starving yourself, know that your body is not broken. For over 300,000 years, a sudden drop in calories was the terrifying siren of an approaching famine, threatening to wipe your entire bloodline off the earth. The cold dread of an empty winter would pierce through your ancestors' bones, forcing their brains to violently lock down every ounce of fat to survive. This is exactly why Ape to Legend exists, to uncover one ancestral secret every single week. Hit subscribe and stay on this fascinating journey with us. You look in the mirror and passionately hate your lack of willpower. But what you call a miserable diet failure, your biology calls the ultimate survival victory. Every time you attempt a severe calorie deficit, you are unknowingly triggering an ancient alarm system buried deep within your DNA, begging you to stay alive. Your modern mind sees a strict summer diet, but your primitive brain sees a catastrophic failure in the global food supply that demands immediate, drastic action. To truly understand why your metabolism violently fights against you, you have to mentally teleport back to the brutal, unforgiving reality of the Pleistocene epoch. Imagine standing completely alone on a frozen tundra. The biting, relentless wind brutally slices across your exposed skin, draining your precious body heat by the second. The hollow hunger inside you feels like a physical, jagged creature, viciously clawing at your stomach lining, demanding energy that simply does not exist here. There were absolutely no guaranteed meals in this frozen wasteland. Human existence was entirely dictated by an unpredictable, terrifying cycle of feast or devastating famine. If you failed to catch a mammoth or gather enough frozen roots, there was no grocery store to save you from slowly withering away into nothingness. In this merciless environment, carrying extra body fat was not an aesthetic flaw to be ashamed of. It was a highly coveted, life-saving biological shield. Those who burned through their fat reserves too quickly simply froze to death in the terrifying dark, forever erased from the human evolutionary family tree. But those who fiercely hoarded every single calorie and slowed down their metabolism managed to live long enough to become your direct, victorious ancestors. Back in the Pleistocene, food wasn't a daily guarantee. When a mammoth finally fell, your ancestors didn't casually eat a small portion and save the rest. There were no refrigerators. Your primitive brain commanded you to aggressively gorge on every single piece of rich, fatty marrow until you could barely move. This explosive feast wasn't gluttony. It was a desperate biological deposit into your body's fat bank, preparing for the terrifyingly barren month that always followed, because eventually the warm sun faded. A brutal, crushing winter descended upon the tundra, completely wiping out every edible green leaf and driving the herds away. Suddenly, your tribe was plunged into the famine phase. For weeks, your ancient family would desperately chew on bitter, frozen bark and boiled leather just to survive. You think your modern diet is hard? Imagine the agonizing muscle cramps and blinding brain fog as your physical body literally began to eat itself alive. To truly grasp this immense suffering, scientists don't just guess. They look directly at the tragic, permanent scars left behind in ancient human skeletal remains. Paleopathologists studying prehistoric bones consistently discover a haunting biological signature. It is a chilling skeletal phenomenon known to science as Harris lines, etching pain into bone. When you look at an X-ray of an ancient leg bone, you will clearly see dense, distinct white stripes crossing horizontally through the calcified tissue. These visible lines are not natural growth patterns. They are traumatic biological markers of extreme, prolonged starvation that occurred while that ancient child was trying to grow. When the freezing famine hit, the body made a ruthless choice. It completely halted all bone growth to violently redirect that fading energy to the beating heart. Only when the agonizing winter ended and food returned did the bones resume growing, leaving a permanent white scar of survival trapped inside the human skeleton. Every single time your ancient grandparents survived a devastating winter famine, their skeleton recorded the horrific trauma. Their fragile bodies never ever forgot that immense pain. You carry the exact same genetic memory today. Your DNA is profoundly traumatized by hundreds of thousands of years of constant, unpredictable, agonizing periods of starvation. So, when you deliberately restrict your food today, your body doesn't understand modern vanity. It only remembers the freezing dark, and it instantly prepares for war. To your ancient brain, a strict summer diet is completely indistinguishable from a catastrophic global famine. It doesn't care about your aesthetic goals. This brings us to a groundbreaking concept proposed by geneticist James Neel in 1962, known to science as the Thrifty Gene Hypothesis. Neel suggested that early humans, who were exceptionally good at rapidly storing fat during brief times of abundance, were the only ones who survived. Your genetic code was naturally selected to view body fat not as a modern physical flaw, but as a priceless, impenetrable biological shield. So the very second your calorie intake drops, your brain aggressively slams the brakes on your metabolic furnace, extinguishing the flames to conserve fuel. Your thyroid gland reduces its output, and your resting heart rate physically slows down. Your body is desperately trying to stretch every single calorie. This is exactly why extreme diets make you feel physically exhausted and constantly shivering. Your body is deliberately turning off its expensive heating systems. The freezing chill you feel in your fingers and toes isn't a sign of weakness. It is your biology violently protecting your core organs. But your thrifty genes don't just stop at turning down the heat. They actively deploy a powerful chemical weapon to force you to eat. Your stomach lining begins pumping out massive amounts of ghrelin, the hunger hormone. It travels directly to your brain, hijacking your absolute conscious control. This isn't just a mild craving, it is an overwhelming, suffocating biological command designed to make you hunt down food before you starve. When you finally break your diet and binge, you feel a crushing wave of guilt, believing you simply lack the mental discipline to succeed. But you are fighting a losing war against hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary programming that kept your ancestors alive in the snow. Your metabolism is performing perfectly. It is flawlessly executing a survival protocol that was meticulously refined over countless brutal millennia in the wild. The tragic irony is that this ancient, life-saving mechanism is now completely trapped in a modern world where famines have been replaced by endless abundance. An environment completely filled with hyper-palatable, calorie-dense foods wrapped in bright plastic is a terrifyingly alien landscape to your deeply ancient hunter-gatherer nervous system. For an ancient brain designed to fiercely crave sugar and fat because they were incredibly rare in nature, a modern donut is a super stimulus. It triggers a dopamine explosion so intense it practically hijacks your nervous system, demanding you consume it all before the imaginary winter finally arrives. You feel a paralyzing surge of pleasure as the sugar floods your bloodstream, completely drowning out any logical, conscious thoughts about your strict diet plan. The evolutionary mismatch is absolutely staggering. We possess the exact metabolism of an Ice Age survivor, yet we live in a world of endless artificial abundance. You can effortlessly summon 3,000 calories to your front door with just the tap of a glowing glass screen, expending absolutely zero physical energy. Meanwhile, your ancestors had to aggressively sprint for 20 brutal miles under a scorching prehistoric sun just to secure a tiny fraction of those same calories. This is exactly why relying purely on modern willpower to lose weight feels like an impossible, suffocating battle against your own deeply ingrained survival biology. Diet culture constantly shames you, telling you that your inability to resist a late-night snack is a terrible moral failure and a weak character flaw. But the absolute truth is that your brain is just doing its job. It is blindly fighting a phantom famine that will never actually come. Once you finally realize this profound mismatch, the agonizing guilt begins to melt away. You stop violently hating your body for simply trying to protect you. Your stubborn fat stores are not an aesthetic curse. They are a profound biological monument to the resilience of your ancestors who absolutely refused to die. They survived the freezing dark, passing down this incredible, life-saving metabolic engine through thousands of generations, straight into your very own DNA today. So the next time you feel a crushing hunger pang on a diet, Recognize it as the victorious echo of 300,000 years of human survival. Understanding this profound biological truth completely changes how you see your own body. No textbook teaches this. Ape to legend does. Every week, but the torture of a strict diet doesn't just stop at physical exhaustion. Have you ever noticed how inexplicably angry you become when you're deeply hungry? This modern phenomenon we playfully call being hangry is actually a deeply terrifying neurological response programmed straight into your brain's fear center, the amygdala. For 300,000 years, starvation wasn't a time to sit quietly and reflect. When food vanished, a calm, passive hominid was a dead hominid. To survive, your brain deliberately flooded your system with stress hormones, forcing you to become hypervigilant, irritable, and terrifyingly aggressive enough to hunt. So when you completely lose your temper over a delayed email because you skipped lunch, you aren't just being difficult or emotionally unstable. Your ancient biology is desperately trying to turn you into a ruthless predator, totally unaware that your only prey is a brightly lit vending machine. And if you think inventing agriculture permanently saved humanity from this brutal cycle, you are falling for the greatest historical trap ever set. In 1984, researchers Cohen and Armalagos analyzed early farming skeletons and discovered something horrifying. Agriculture didn't make us healthier, it actually destroyed our bodies. The moment our ancestors completely stopped hunting and relied entirely on grain, their bones became drastically shorter and their teeth exploded with painful cavities. Farming provided just enough calories to keep humanity breeding, but it plunged us into an era of chronic, soul-crushing malnutrition that lasted for millennia. We survived the terrifying famines of the Ice Age, only to accidentally trap ourselves in a miserable agricultural cage. And now, history is repeating itself. Today, we are trapped again. Not by a lack of food, but by a catastrophic abundance that our ancient thrifty genes simply cannot process. So the very next time a trendy magazine tells you that you just need more discipline to fight your cravings, mentally throw it away. You cannot fight 300 millennia of brutal Ice Age conditioning. Instead, you must forgive your profoundly thrifty genes for simply trying to save you. Your body is an absolute biological marvel. It is a living, breathing museum of every single catastrophe your human lineage ever violently overcame. To understand the massive dietary trap we are in today, we need to look at a concept biologists call energy return on investment. In the wild, you absolutely cannot eat if you don't move. Every single calorie your ancestors consumed had to be paid for with extreme physical labor. Evolutionary biologist Daniel Lieberman extensively studied ancient persistence hunting, showing exactly how our fragile bodies were built for exhausting, relentless, and physically agonizing forward motion. To catch a gazelle, your ancestors couldn't sprint faster than it. They had to relentlessly track it under a boiling sun until the animal collapsed from heat stroke. This meant spending thousands of precious calories just to secure a single meal. The biological math was brutal. You violently burn energy to get energy, but the reward was immense. A successful hunt yielded a massive surplus of rich, fatty meat, making the agonizing physical sacrifice entirely worth it for your survival. Now, fast forward to your modern living room. You pick up a small rectangular glowing device, simply tap it 3 times with your thumb and wait. Within 30 minutes, a stranger directly hands you a bag containing 3,000 calories of hyper-palatable, deep-fried food. The physical energy you spent? Practically zero. This is exactly where the evolutionary mismatch violently shatters your biology. Your ancient brain literally cannot comprehend this astronomical, effortless energy return on investment. To your deeply confused, thrifty genes, this zero-effort feast is an absolute miracle. Your brain genuinely thinks you have finally found the ultimate prehistoric utopia. So it violently floods your system with reward chemicals, aggressively screaming at you to eat as much as humanly possible before this magical food source vanishes. And this is the exact moment the modern diet industry aggressively steps in to profit off your biological confusion, selling you the toxic illusion of control. They loudly tell you that you just need a better 30-day meal plan. a new expensive supplement, or simply more sheer willpower to resist a modern world. But trying to outsmart a 300,000-year-old survival mechanism with a 30-day diet book is exactly like trying to stop a charging mammoth with a tiny twig. It is fundamentally, biologically impossible. Your body isn't maliciously trying to make you look bad. It is fiercely, relentlessly executing its ancient, sacred mandate to keep you alive. You cannot rewire a brain forged by 300,000 years of terrifying Ice Age famines. So you must absolutely stop relying on sheer, exhausting modern willpower. Your ancestors never used mental discipline to resist eating sugary junk food. They simply lived in a barren world where toxic temptations didn't exist. To survive the modern dietary trap, you must actively re-engineer your immediate surroundings. You have to physically transform your modern home into a prehistoric savanna. Right now, your kitchen pantry is a supernormal minefield. Every brightly colored package is expertly designed to violently hijack your ancient dopamine receptors and trigger hunger. When you constantly stare at easily accessible snacks, a suffocating wave of desire seeps into your mind, relentlessly haunting your every conscious thought until you finally cave. The absolute most flexibility strategy is invisible to your willpower: total elimination. If the hyper-palatable food simply isn't in your house, your brain stops screaming. You must artificially recreate the physical effort of the ancient hunt. Make obtaining high-calorie junk food incredibly inconvenient, forcing your body to actually burn energy first. Delete the toxic food delivery apps that magically summon feasts to your door. If you truly want a sweet treat, force yourself to physically walk miles to get it. Next, you have to brutally analyze how food is structured. Modern processed meals are essentially pre-digested, rapidly melting instantly on your tongue and totally bypassing your fullness signals. For millions of years, your ancestors had to aggressively tear and heavily chew through incredibly tough, fibrous plants and dense meat. This grueling mechanical effort signaled the brain. When you eat whole, unprocessed foods, you are speaking the ancient chemical language your stomach actually understands, slowly calming the frantic survival alarms ringing inside you. Instead of violently starving yourself in a modern panic, you gently convince your terrified nervous system that the devastating winter famine is not actually coming back. Once your thrifty genes finally feel completely safe, that suffocating, tight, twisted knot of endless hunger in your stomach will naturally begin to loosen and fade away. You no longer have to hopelessly grind your teeth and heavily suffer through another miserable diet. You simply align your modern choices with your deeply ancient biology. By intelligently mastering your environment, you permanently take back control from the prehistoric ghost that has been silently dictating your eating habits from the dark shadows. It is finally time to stop viewing your own physical body as a malicious enemy that constantly wants to ruin your modern summer plans. Every single ounce of stubborn body fat that you violently criticize is actually a hard-won biological trophy of immense prehistoric resilience. You are the direct, unbroken descendant of the absolute greatest starvation survivors to ever walk the freezing surface of this brutal planet. For hundreds of thousands of years, nature mercilessly weeded out anyone who could not furiously hoard calories when the bitter winter winds howled. The harsh truth is that your modern diet is failing precisely because your ancient biology is working with absolutely breathtaking, flawless perfection. The world around you drastically changed in a mere blink of evolutionary time, but your DNA still deeply remembers the terrifying ice. So, rather than exhaustingly battling your cravings with fragile willpower, you must reshape your environment to gently soothe those panicked ancient alarms. Remove the toxic supernormal stimuli, embrace the mechanical effort of eating whole foods, and finally make peace with your remarkably thrifty genes. Once the deafening siren of the phantom famine is silenced, the crushing weight of diet guilt will naturally melt away from your shoulders. You will never again look at a piece of bread and feel the terrifying, paralyzing loss of control dictated by a confused brain. You stand tall, fully understanding that you carry the ultimate survival engine, meticulously refined by millennia of darkness, hunger, and triumph. It is time to stop starving yourself. Your body isn't broken, It's remembering 300,000 years. That story continues. Subscribe to Ape to Legend and stay on the journey. You look down at the numbers on the scale one last time, but the miserable feeling of personal weakness has completely evaporated. The biological dread of the empty winter has been permanently replaced by a profound respect for the resilience of your human bloodline. You confidently step off the scale, realizing that the ancient survival mechanism keeping you alive is the very thing you've been trying to starve.